San Jose, California, April 18th of 1906 is 5:12 in the morning as dust begins to drop from a chandelier in the Daisy bedroom as Sarah Winchester is bolted awake. See the floor beneath her starting to shake. As she would jump from her bed and rush to the door, she would grab the knob and twist to discover the door stuck. See, the frame was twisted in the earthquake. Outside, a half-finished 7-story tower begins to groan as bricks begin to fall. Inside, Sarah grabs a crowbar, which she keeps nearby for just last-minute renovations. One hit, then two. The wood starts to splinter as the latch finally gives. She would rush into the hallway coughing because of all the plaster in the air. Behind her, the tower collapses, and with that, the shaking stops. Now, locals will say that it wasn't just an earthquake. They'll say it was the spirits of the people that lost their lives to Winchester rifles, warning Sarah to keep building, or else. Tonight we'll see why she listened, day and night, for the next 38 years. It's the first walkthrough, and Sarah's already drawing 13 windows on the same wall. The carpenters, they swap a look, but she's serious about the numbers. But before the house turned into a 160-room maze, there was only grief. Winter of 1881, just a few months after tuberculosis took her husband, Sarah Winchester sat across from a Boston medium. Now the man closed his eyes, and when he spoke, it hardly sounded like him.
Build, never stop. When the hammers go quiet, they'll come for you.
A promise and a threat in one sentence. Obey, and maybe the spirits will leave you alone. Refuse, and they'll claim her life. Now, Sarah had already buried her baby girl in 1866 and her husband in 1881.
William W. Winchester, the only son of the late Governor Oliver F. Winchester, died at the family residence on Prospect Street last evening, aged 43. The disease was consumption, but although he had been in feeble health for several years, it was not until a few months ago that alarming symptoms were manifested, and only a few days ago that he was brought here from New York, hope of his recovery being practically abandoned. Doubtless the recent death of his father hastened his own departure.
Now she's sitting on roughly $20 million plus half the Winchester Repeating Arms dividends and no family. So she buys a ticket west all the way from New Haven to San Jose, and in 1886 she steps off the train. She sees 40 acres of apricot trees and signs for a simple 8-room farmhouse. That little place, it was the first domino. Within weeks, carpenters are working in shifts, sunrise to lamplight, trying to keep up with Sarah's midnight sketches. Walls vanish, staircases pop up overnight. In the house, it would spread like ivy. Only Sarah knows the plan. If there's even a plan at all. Was she building a safe house for angry ghosts, or perhaps a prison to keep them in? And what happened to the person who never let the hammers rest? Stick around next. The doors open to midair, a staircase that dead ends into the ceiling. All because Sarah believed that the spirits, they demanded it. Now, by Sarah Winchester's first sunrise in San Jose, the apricot orchard was already screaming with saws and hammers. About 16 carpenters showed up every single morning, and another crew they would take over at night. The house basically never went to bed. Over 36 years, they added 160 rooms, about 10,000 windows, and 40 staircases. We're talking about more railing than some small towns. They built every which way inside the house also. A second-floor door opened straight into open air. One tourist, they almost stepped out and met the lawn, head first. Another staircase would zigzag 7 separate times and then slam straight into the ceiling above. Guides called the staircase to nowhere. Workers say it was just one of a dozen tricks that was meant to throw off any angry spirit that might have been following Sarah around. Then there was her thing for the number 13. 13 panes in a window, 13 drain holes in the sink, chandeliers that would be rewired to hold 13 bulbs. Her will? 13 separate signatures. Now maybe it was comfort, maybe it was guilt, but either way, the crew counted right along with her. Now skeptics, they swear the tour companies, they just hype all this up. But the blueprints, they still show 13 turns and 13 rails posted all over the place. Picture it's nighttime, 3 a.m. An oil lamp that's flickering in the corner. You've just nailed the last step on a brand new staircase and a note slides from underneath the door. It's Sarah's handwriting. Tear it out. Start over. The spirits have changed their minds.
We just finished the bloody thing.
I mean, this was a constant build, rip out, build again. The mansion turns into a puzzle that no architect can solve, and every hallway seems to be whispering the same warning: don't stop. And the rule, it held until the day the earthquake hit hard enough to knock 7 stories off the house. That's next. It's going to rewrite the way that we see every single thing going on in the story in a single violent jolt. Daylight finally reached San Jose on April 18th of 1906. The Winchester house? It was no longer 7 stories tall. Just moments earlier, the quake tore the top floors clean off, talking about brick towers that crashed, heavy beams snapped, and the central turret hit the ground. In the middle of the chaos, Sarah Winchester did something unheard of. She told every single hammer to stop. Instead of rebuilding, she ordered the crew to board up 30 wrecked rooms, including the Daisy room that had trapped her inside. Those spaces, they stayed sealed behind fresh plaster, as if the house was frozen at the very second the spirits yelled, "Enough." For the next 110 years, guys would lead tourists past blank walls, and behind them would sit overturned furniture. A century of dust. The wood dried out and the silence grew thick, and then in 2016, restoration workers finally pried the boards loose, flashlights cutting through cobwebs, stale air rushing past, and a guide swears he heard a long, mournful sigh in the hallway, even though there was no one there. Was it perhaps Sarah, angry that strangers had stepped into a refuge, or the house itself, letting out a breath after a century? Either way, the single sigh reminded every single visitor, some rooms in the mansion, they were never meant for living voices. Now down in the basement, a wheelbarrow sometimes rolls through the coal dust all by itself. The guides call the ghost Clyde, a handyman with a mustache who apparently never clocked out. People see him in 2 different spots, the furnace corridor below and somehow the grand ballroom 3 floors up. Now back in 1970, a restoration crew tested Clyde's patience. A carpenter on a ladder in the Hall of Fires felt a tap on his shoulder, but there was no one there. He climbed again, and this time something shoved him hard right in the chest. He got down real fast.
I felt someone touch me! I'm out of here!
He refused to go back. Now, ever since, tourists say that the room hits you with a sudden blast of heat and the occasional invisible nudge. They say if you take the night tour and head to the 3rd floor maze, you might just hear soft footsteps right behind you and a breath that says your name. As you turn around, the shadows will slide right off the wall. Downstairs in the ballroom, chandeliers as heavy as a small car that sometimes swing on their own chains, even when the air is still. Guards on the late shift, they swear they hear a soft lullaby that comes from Sarah's old pipe organ.
Are you hearing this?
Keys moving when nobody's sitting on the bench. Now some folks, they just chalk it up to wood settling and weird acoustics. Others figure it's just Clyde still making his rounds, keeping the place exactly the way that Sarah would want. Stick around next. Next, we line up the skeptics against the believers and decide whether those halls echo with ghosts or just guilt.
What's up, Grave Talk? We're back in the world's MOST haunted hallway! Smash that ecto-like button!
Now, long before TikTok Ghost Hunters was live streaming creaking floors, one paperback ignited the legend of the Winchester house. Prominent American ghosts, they devoted an entire chapter to the Winchester mansion, complete with a made-up medium named Adam Coons, who, she claimed, ordered Sarah to build forever or die. Now, the book didn't just repeat the curse, it cemented it, and suddenly every newsstand in America stocked a story about a rifle victim stalking a guilt-ridden widow. 4 decades later, the house found a new stage, reality TV.
Okay, now I know for a fact that, and I'm sure Leslie will back me up on this, many people have seen what can be described as a workman down here in the basement. So you're right with that, David. People have seen that. But going off the high readings of EMF, how do you explain that? Because David's picked up on the spirit of a workman down here.
Yeah.
Most Haunted Live broadcast a 7-hour lockdown in the mansion in October 2007. We're talking about seances in the ballroom, door handles that was turning all by themselves, and the crew calling out, "Sarah, can you hear us?" Millions watched in real time, and ticket sales, they soared the very next morning, and then came the loudest crew in ghost television, Ghost Adventures. In 2011, Zach Baggins and team, they locked down overnight, and they claimed that they heard EVPs whispering, "Sarah," and "get out." And then they had a stick figure apparition on their sensors that was standing near the door to nowhere. Viewers, they rushed to book the same exact tour route, hoping that they would hear the house talking back. Now, Hollywood, they could not resist. In 2018, the film Winchester hit theaters worldwide. The trailer showcasing seance circles and rifle victim spirits, and the 1906 quake, well, that was just a supernatural smackdown. The critics would mutter fiction, but the box office bump, that was real. Talking about tour guides that reported record crowds asking to see the 13-nail seance room that was featured on screen. One paperback, 2 TV specials, and a Hollywood Scream Fest, each layer thickening the legend until it was almost impossible to scrape fact from fiction. But whether you're clutching a ghost meter or a popcorn bucket, the Winchester house, it keeps writing brand new chapters. Next, we flip the script, pitting skeptic blueprints against believer testimonies to ask, is this labyrinth haunted, or are we just chasing echoes of a very profitable myth? Now, not everyone believes that the Winchester house is haunted. In fact, quite the opposite. In fact, they would say that the only cold spots that you'll feel is the draft of 10,000 windows, and those whispers that you keep talking about that you're hearing, well, that's nothing more than your own echo in a crooked hallway. They believe that everything is just odd acoustics and the power of suggestion. In fact, some historians will back up some of the claims, especially when it comes to the spirit-confusing features of the house. I mean, that switchback staircase to nowhere, well, that was probably just a shortcut that was walled off after the earthquake damage. And those shallow 1-inch steps that everyone talks about that spirals like a seashell on the way down, well, Sarah had arthritis and it was brutal. She needed ramps that she could just kind of shuffle up so she wouldn't have to lift up her feet. Maybe the house isn't that strange after all. Maybe it's just easy accessibility. But you see, the believers are never going to believe that. In fact, they're going to say that they've got proof in the form of smartphone photos. Ever since 2010, guests keep snapping the same photo of a wild-haired woman staring from the upper story windows. One that no tour route can ever reach. And staff swears that no employees were ever up there. Yet the same face appears in photo after photo after photo. But let me ask you, which house do you believe in? A strange but practical design of a grieving genius, or a maze where vengeful spirits might guard every misnumbered stair? Stick with me. Up next, we push past the blueprints and the eyewitness accounts into the fringe theories that the entire mansion is, well, it's a machine built to churn the restless dead through endless corridors. Buckle up. The next hallway, it may not have an exit. Look at the Winchester floor plan. I mean, if you can call it that. Corridors that double back, staircases that twist, and dead ends all over the place, and some windows that face walls instead of the sky. A few investigators think the whole mansion is nothing more than just a ghost maze, built to trap wandering spirits and keep them spinning forever. Now others push it even further. They call the house a machine for the afterlife. They say that it was tuned with secret ratios and the constant number 13 to scrub guilt from Sarah's soul while locking her family's victims in an endless loop. Now there's a simpler idea though. It doesn't even require any ghosts. Maybe Sarah was just some type of an architect that had the cash to try ideas that no male builder would ever touch. Or maybe she was a heartbroken widow who buried herself in sawdust so she wouldn't drown in the silence. And yes, maybe that medium's warning was real, and every nail she drove was a bargain with the dead. So what do you see? A maze, a machine, a masterpiece, or a monument of sorrow? Tonight you hold the hammer. Drop your verdict in the comments or tag us with your own Winchester whispers.
Hold up, before Clyde runs me over again, subscribe to Retraced Echoes, or he might get ya.
Well, before we lock up for the night, here's the master key. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Warrens' legacy. It steps right inside. We're talking about Chris McKenna, the grandson of Ed and Lorraine Warren. He joins us to pull back the curtain on 40 years of hauntings. We're talking about everything from Annabelle's glass case to poltergeist that lifts his own bed. Did the Daisy bedroom sigh back at you? Then don't hit stop. Hit record. Footsteps on the ceiling, whispers in an empty hall. Tag Retraced Echoes with all of your evidence. Who knows? Maybe our next episode will be about you. When the next corridor creaks open, you'll know where the follow latch is. See you on the other side. Until I see you next time, goodbye.